Howdy and hello everyone, I'm here in the forest. Why am I here in the forest? Well, because one, I want to keep this hat nice and clean and hidden from any sort of light because it is extremely blinding when put in any form of light. Two, because I just like this place. It's nice, it's calm, it's everything I want. Three, because I have an immense fear of straight lines and, well, the forest is pretty much the best place you can go to hide from straight lines.
Howdy and hello everyone, I'm Critic and you're the viewer, and it's finally time for me to do something that I'm pretty sure you've all been waiting for if you've been watching my channel since August of last year. It's time to review Arctic Rescue at SeaWorld San Diego. Oh dear God, do I have a lot to say about this ride. And now let's just get started because I don't know what else we'd do. Our story starts in 2019. Emperor hadn't even started construction yet, Tattle Twister was open but was breaking all the time, Journey to Atlantis had finally reopened after its very long refurbishment that gave it a bit of life, and we had already gone rumors for a 2021 coaster, showing that SeaWorld was not letting up with their insistentness on adding a bunch of roller coasters in one time, which, yeah, that definitely did them very well during 2020.
This mysterious new ride would be an Intamin family launch coaster and would go into the former spot of the Wild Arctic simulator ride, which was still open at the time. However, it was basically on its last legs and would close in literally only a few months after we found this out. It would have 4 launches, different from the current ride's 3 launches, and would have a very similar height and length to Manta in the same park. At this time, all we pretty much knew was that it would be an Intamin family launch coaster. While it was pretty obvious it would be probably themed to snowmobiles, so it would have either a motorbike or straddle-like seating, we could never say anything 100% for sure. That was until 2022. In around mid-2022, some new plans showed up, showing the ride with now a different layout and 3 launches instead of the initial 4, making it so it wouldn't reclaim the title from West Coast Racers in Magic Mountain, which, to be perfectly honest, was a bit of a lost opportunity. However, I'm pretty sure this did make it so the ride had more actual ride and not more straight track. And then in around midsummer 2022, walls started going up around the former Wild Arctic site, or outside of the Wild Arctic site. There were no walls in the park, it was just all in an unused section of the parking lot that had been reserved for this stuff.
The reason why I know this, even though you can't really find any information about this, is because I was at the park when this happened, but me decided not to record this. So, yeah, unfortunately I don't have any evidence of this. However, it did happen, and trust me, it did. And then immediately after that, Parks Bros uploaded a video saying there is now suddenly Intamin track at the park, and ground hadn't even been broken yet, but okay, Intamin just decided to get the track over here early, pretty much confirming that yes, this Wild Arctic roller coaster was confirmed, and only a bit after that did they finally start breaking ground on what at the time was pretty much called the Wild Arctic roller coaster.
So as ground continued to be dug, and eventually footers began to be poured, we all started questioning, well, what would this ride's theme be, and what would it be called? I'm pretty sure at this point we all pretty much had an idea that this would be a snowmobile-themed ride, and its entrance would be in the Wild Arctic building, and you'd exit out into the exhibit, just like the former Wild Arctic attraction. Me, who had started doing construction updates on this ride, called it simply the Wild Arctic roller coaster, until we had actually gotten a final name.
And then, in late September, Arctic Rescue was finally announced, and this is when it became pretty apparent on what SeaWorld is suddenly trying to do now. All of a sudden, they are really, 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 really trying to hammer it in your head that they have this little thingy called SeaWorld Rescue. I mean, like, technically they're already trying to do that because they had a big show on it. Whether or not it's still going, I don't remember. They had Wave Breaker. They were going to have a ride for SeaWorld Orlando that got canceled. They had a ride for SeaWorld San Diego that somehow was supposed to be on it, but never ended up being on it. And now they have Arctic Rescue and SeaWorld Rescue Jr. And then, eventually, it didn't test. You wanna know what did happen, though? San Diego decided, let's be very wet all of a sudden. And now, just rain everywhere, and the entire site became a big mud pile. To the point where all they could pretty much do is just work on... I have no idea, to be perfectly honest. Probably the station, but I had no view into the station, no one else really did. So, you know, couldn't really do much in terms of that. However, eventually the rain did finally decide to let up, and trains finally started arriving on site, and theming started happening, because, once again, they really did not want that to happen again. On the construction site, there was everything of the sorts. White rocks, black rocks, trees, fir trees, bushes that look so out of place when they're not grown, and a bit of terrain. And then finally, the ride started testing for like 2 weeks. And then the ride opened to pass holders on May 28th, 2023. And oh dear God, this thing broke down like all of the time. It broke down, if I remember correctly, around 10 to 12 times that day. And that's probably an understatement. This thing was unreliable as hell that day, but thankfully though, they did something right to it, and on Friday, June 2nd, 2023, the ride opened and only broke down like once or twice.
A few striking issues with Arctic Rescue during its media days were it was only running one train for some reason, and obviously the breakdowns, and because of its one train ops, it reached a maximum wait that I saw of about 180 minutes. That is atrocious. Please never do that again. Thankfully, though, on its opening day, it did run 2 trains and only reached about 60 minutes. And also, the queue line is stylized. Thankfully, we did not get another monstrosity queue line like Emperor's, where it had no theming whatsoever. The station has some paint and some nice lights and some cool stuff, and it's actually stylized to look like an Arctic base station. No, everyone, this is not supposed to look like the Arctic. It's an Arctic base station. You can very obviously tell because they put snow spray paint-ish stuff on the top of that weird tunnel, and there's an American, Canadian, Japanese for some reason, and Norwegian flag. Obviously meaning that this is not the middle of the Arctic. This is a base station. Get it right.
The ride would have a length of 2,800 feet, very similar to Manta in the same park. 3 launches, still a bit similar to Manta in the same park, and a max height of 30 feet. Huh. You know, I think these two things, they seem a bit similar, don't you think?
Anyway, now let's take a look at the ride. You start out by taking a turn out of the station. After hitting the first launch, you wait for a second, and then you finally, as you exit the building, start accelerating. You take a high turn in the sky and then get a weird stomach feeling as you drop down into a few twists and turns. You take a slightly banked turn into another slight hill and then into a few curvy things. See a sign of a bunch of cities and other stuff like that, and then you go through a tunnel that gives you a really cool hand chopper moment. Then you go up onto this ride's second highest point, and you drop down again into a very surprisingly forceful turn, past the Arctic Scout helicopter from the building, and into another few turns that give you some nice fun feelings. And then into the third and final launch where you get your photo taken. Then into the final high part of the ride, and then you go into a very high-paced segment where you take a few turns, a very shaky 90-degree bank turn for some reason, you go past the 4 flags, and into the brake run. That was Arctic Rescue. It's a very fun and surprisingly forceful and fast ride. And there you have it. That was Arctic Rescue. In my opinion, Arctic Rescue is the sort of ride like Manta in the same park, but I mean that in all the best ways possible. I'm not saying that as in a way that it's really similar to the ride and you might as well just ride Manta, or you might as well just ride Arctic Rescue. I'm saying that as in it takes all of the good things about Manta and makes it in its own special way. Manta has a very good thing in the way that it's good for pretty much anyone, whether you're a really hard-going thrill seeker or someone who's just getting into coasters. Arctic Rescue does that same thing. It's not too intense, but it's not to the point where it'll bore you to death. It also has those cool straddle seats of which Manta does not have, which makes the fact that while yeah, it does go up 30 feet, and while yeah, it does go 40 miles an hour, just 3 miles per hour shy of Manta's speed, it still is very different from Manta, and yet still almost as fun as it. If I could call Arctic Rescue anything, it would be the sequel to Manta. And like most sequels, while I do still have a soft spot in my heart for the good old Manta of 2012, I will still always enjoy Arctic Rescue, because it just does all of the things Manta does, but in its own unique way. And if I could choose between the original Wild Arctic and the new Arctic Rescue, I would choose Arctic Rescue all day. It's not just because I'm a coaster enthusiast, it's purely because this ride is just so much better than that simulator ride ever was. That simulator ride was old, the CGI was sucked, and the queue line, well, it was outdoors, and you barely even went inside at all. This new ride, it's actually a ride sort of thing. It's up to date, it has nice seats, and it's a physical thing. You don't just stay in one spot all the time. And the queue line, the inside of it, is actually done up, unlike Wild Arctic, where you just kind of stood inside a weirdly lit room. So now that Arctic Rescue is here, in my opinion, SeaWorld should now start looking for this park's real standout ride. Because I'm telling you right now, this park is essentially SeaWorld Orlando if you take away Manta and Kraken and Mako. If you add any of those levels of coasters to this park, it's going to be up there with SeaWorld Orlando. I'm telling you. And all SeaWorld needs to do is just find a place for that ride to go. And maybe I'll make the next video about that.
So, anyway, I think that'll be it for this video. I hope you like it, and tell me what you think of that new intro I made. So, anyway, hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. If you like for more subscribing, leave a like. And I was the Critic, you're the viewer, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.